Welcome friends to our India's knowledge series video number 24, and today we will be discussing India's 40 investment property. We might have heard about property, plant and equipment. We have also discussed intangible assets, and now we are discussing a special category, investment property. You may ask, what is the difference between property, plant and equipment covered under Ind AS 16 and investment property covered under Ind AS 40? Only difference is Ind AS 16 covers the property which has been occupied by the owner for his own business purposes or industrial purposes or commercial purposes or even for administrative purposes. Whereas Ind AS 40 covers if the property is owned by the entity but let on hire or for the purposes of capital appreciation. In that case, it is like an investment. But since the investment has been made in a property, that is covered under Ind AS 40 investment property. As the name itself suggests, only land, building, or both will be covered under Ind AS 40. Any other assets which has been let on hire will either fall under Ind AS 16 property, plant and equipment, or it may fall under Ind AS 116 leases. So we will be only looking into land, buildings, or both which has been let out or maintained for the purpose of earning rentals by giving it to others or for capital appreciation. That is the criteria which you have to select. Majority of the discussion which we will be having today is to identify whether it is a investment property or it is a owner occupied property. If it is owner occupied property, we will apply Ind AS 16. If it is investment property, we will apply Ind AS 40. You may also ask, what is the difference between this accounting treatment? We will look into that because certain specific disclosures are required with respect to Ind AS 40 compared to Ind AS 16. So you have to parallelly consider what is a property which should be recognized, measured, presented as per Ind AS 16, and what is the similar recognition, measurement and presentation requirement as per Ind AS 40. So that is an important point. Friends, before we go into the standard, I am overwhelmed by the responses I am getting from each one of you by means of comments, queries, requests for additional explanations for certain concepts which we have been discussed, and it is always my pleasure to be of some use to our subscribers. So accordingly, I request you to post all your questions, all your comments, all your inputs, all your clarifications which you want an explanation to be given. If some more details has to be given in respect of a particular concept, please post it in our YouTube channel and it will be my pleasure to answer them, and it will also reach all your friends when it is posted on our channel. With that, let me move into the structure in which we are going to discuss. A standard structure for the purposes of making you to recognize the learning process of Ind AS. That is the reason why every time I'm showing the structure of the discussion. And if you keep this in your mind, you will know an overview of this particular standard. The intricacies of the standard will be known when you are going into the particular slide. What is scoped in as per Ind AS 40 and what is scoped out and to be covered under other standards is first topic which we will discuss. The second topic is what do you mean by investment property? What exactly is the definition of investment property. How to determine a particular property as an investment property will be the second discussion which we will have. The third point which we will discuss is what you mean by owner occupied property. The moment I conclude that certain properties are owner occupied properties, they moved out of this standard and will be recognized with the respective standard, most likely under India's 16 property, plant and equipment. We will discuss what is the points to be considered when a property is assessed, whether it meets the criteria of an investment property or it moves towards owner occupied property criteria. So let us discuss that. And sometimes a property may be used for dual purposes. It may be used for owner occupation, and something may be given for earning rental to others. So in that scenario, what is the classification which we have to do with respect to that property? Whether I can split and recognize one portion as investment property, another portion as owner occupied property, or both has to be considered as a single item. So there are guidances under this standard where a property has been held for more than one purpose, or we call it as a dual purpose. And what is the recognition criteria when you can recognize an investment property? And I must tell you that the recognition criteria is very simple. Being an asset, the moment it meets the recognition criteria of an asset, we have seen enough number of times as per India's 16, where we said that you should be able to get economic benefits arising out of that to the entity, and the cost should be reliably measured. This is the basic principle which we are talking about for an asset recognition. Similar thing will also come to investment property. And then once you have decided that it can be recognized as an investment property, what is the value to be attributed? That we call it as a measurement, right? So what is the initial measurement? That is on the date on which you have acquired an investment property. And what is the subsequent measurement on the reporting date? Whether it's similar to India 16 property, plant and equipment, or it goes for a different perception, different prescription under India 40. We will look into that particular aspect. There is always a possibility that once I have concluded certain items as investment property, there is no guarantee, or I should say that it will never be retained at this same category. There may be a change in circumstances where the management decided to convert an investment property into owner occupation. In that case, there is a transfer out from the investment property category to any other category, or it may be leased out as a right of use asset under Ind AS 116. That is also a transfer out from the classification which we have done as per investment property into other category. That is what transfers out. What is transfers in? It is the opposite. Something which has been previously classified as owner occupied property or any other property, now treated as investment property because it meets the recognition criteria. The usage pattern has been changed in the current reporting period, based on which it meets the recognition criteria of an investment property rather than the owner occupied property. In that case, it's a transfer in into the investment property category. What is the accounting treatment? How it has to be measured on the date of transfer in or transfer out, so that how the carrying value can be considered as the measurement on the date of the transfer in or transfer out. We will discuss that aspect as well. We should also understand what is the major disclosures required. One peculiar disclosure in this standard is the standard talks about investment property to be maintained as per cost model. But the disclosure says you should also disclose what is the fair value of the investment property as part of your notes and accounts. So every investment property should also be fair valued, and that fair value should be disclosed as part of your notes and accounts. That's a peculiar disclosure. So we will see what are all the other disclosures which is required to be done. And finally, we will have a small comparison between Ind AS 40 and AS 13 investments, because there is no separate standard on investment property. There is a passing comment which has been made in in AS 13 investments. To that extent, we will see what are all the differences between these two standards for you to have more clarity when you are reading Ind AS 40. With that, we will move on to what is scoped in and what is scoped out under Ind AS 40. In scope items are when we are treating a property which is not to be considered under any other standard. All other items will come into this standard, and it should be applied for making the recognition, measurement and disclosure requirement of an investment property. What is investment property? We will see the definition little later. What is scoped out? Any biological asset related to agricultural activity. So biological assets are covered by Ind AS 41 agriculture standard, and we have two categories of biological asset. One, bearer biological asset, which is covered as per the cost model prescribed by Ind AS 16. We had a passing comment about that when we discussed Ind AS 16. And the second category is a consumable biological asset, where the biological asset is grown and consumed and it doesn't have a longer economic useful life. Whereas in bearer biological asset, the biological asset stand as it is, only harvested products are coming out of that. Agricultural produce is harvested out of the bearer biological asset. So those biological assets relating to agricultural activities are outside the scope of investment property. Second, and biological asset also talks about in case if you are having certain assets which are related to agricultural activity as per Ind AS 41, that is also considered as biological asset. It's also covered under that particular standard. So to that extent, for example, if I am talking about a property which has been uh, used for agricultural purposes, that could also be part of the biological asset to some extent according to Ind AS 41, but we will discuss that at length when we are discussing Ind AS 41. So those items are outside the scope of Ind AS 40. Similarly, any mineral rights, any mineral reserves, we were discussing about Ind AS 38 intangible assets. Any intangible assets which is arising out of a right to exploit mineral resources or mineral rights is covered by Ind AS 38. To that extent, it's outside the scope of Ind AS 40, right? With this scope in and scope out, let us try to understand what we mean by investment property. As I said, there are two important conditions to be satisfied, or any one of the condition. It is not cumulative condition here. What it says that held for to earn rentals or for capital appreciation or both. So there are two conditions which we are talking about. Held to earn rentals. So that means I have given it on rental to others, land or building or both. So not others. For example, if I have given a machinery on rental, so that doesn't get covered under investment property because it is not a property, it's a plant, right? Held to earn rentals or for capital appreciation. Sometimes I might have invested in a property or land, but allowing it as to have a capital appreciation. Idea is not to use that land in the near future, but I am allowing it to get the value appreciated. Because of that, my investment, what we normally do for an investment, we put an amount extra money which we are having into something and allow it to grow. There is a capital appreciation which is coming in. That is a major benefit. Incidental to that is we may earn some dividends or interest or whatever case may be. Similar application of mind should be there for investment property also. In those cases, it's a financial asset which is invested, whereas here we are investing in a property for capital appreciation. There is a possibility that I also earn rentals, but the property has been allowed to have a capital appreciation. For example, I develop a land and building and give it on rent. Dual purpose, one, I will earn a reasonable rental on year basis. At the same time, capital appreciation is also happening because of the value increases over a period of time. And in that is what we say that both could be a possibility. Okay, we shall say whether we have held it for earning rentals or for capital appreciation or for both. If that is a land or building or both, that is called an investment property. What is the other thing which could be a possibility is this is a condition. Normally, this type of investment property should be capable of generating independent cash flows compared to other assets. So, any other asset held by the entity that generates cash flow, it is not dependent. This property is not dependent in generating its independent cash flows. So the reason is, suppose if it is dependent on the other assets for development or generation of cash flows, what will happen? You could recollect, we discussed in Ind AS 36 impairment of asset, what we call it as a cash generating unit. So this property will be part of the cash generating unit. To that extent, it may be even a corporate asset which has to be considered. So it should be capable of generating cash flows largely independent of other assets held by the entity, not part of any CGU. It is an independent asset. So this is the two major things which we have to consider for the purposes of investment property. What happens? Ind AS 40 is applied to this type of category of a property held by the entity. Now, we have to differentiate investment property from owner occupied property. Accordingly, the definition of owner occupied property is also very, very important for our consideration. What is the definition of owner occupied property? Held by the owner for production or supply of goods or services. The moment I put this, immediately you will understand that this is nothing but the definition of property, plant and equipment as per Ind AS 16. Right? So you may always see when I explain a concept, I'm not explaining the concept on a standalone basis for the particular standard. For a simple reason, the application, practical application of a standard is to be considered on a holistic basis. What is a related standard? Where it will move out from this standard to other standard means we should consider the related standard or connected standards, and whatever definition which is coming in also, what is the related or connected definition. That's the way in which you have to prepare yourself when you apply Ind AS in practice, when you advise your clients, or if you are a student when you are preparing for your examination. Never ever study a standard on a standalone basis. It should be connected with the related standards and understood. Then only it will be always fresh in your mind. The moment a fact pattern has been given, you will apply not only based on this particular standard, you will analyze whether other standards should be applied in that context. So that is the reason why everywhere, wherever there is another standard is connected, I am bringing that as part of our discussion. So held by the owner for production or supply of goods or services is nothing but the definition of property, plant and equipment as per Ind AS 16. So owner occupied property is nothing but property, plant and equipment covered under Ind AS 16. And if you see that held by the owner for production, supply, goods or services, that is one of the category of property, plant, equipment. It also says also or held for by the owner for administrative purposes. Maybe in the corporate office, I have put that asset, furniture, fixtures, or any other assets, but they are used for administrative purposes, not for production of goods or services. That is also covered as part of owner occupied property as per Ind AS 16. So this is nothing but property, plant, equipment as per Ind AS 16. That's what you have to keep it in your mind. Why I am stressing again and again Ind AS 16 is that the classification of a particular property into investment property will happen only if it is not a owner occupied property. So accordingly, Whatever we have learned already as per Ind AS 16, you have to apply in principle. And if you satisfied that it falls under Ind AS 16, then Ind AS 40 is not applicable. It is not in to be considered. It is not in scope as per Ind AS 40. That is the reason why we have to clearly understood what is owner occupied property. Maybe I can repeat for the purposes of understanding. It is exactly like a negative list given in a GST regime, where you find out what are all the items which are covered under GST and what are all the items not covered. So if you are trying to identify what are all the items covered, what are all the goods or services covered under GST, it will be a exhaustive list. Instead, what the regime has given, it has given a negative list where GST is not applicable. So similarly, in our case, it is a negative list. Owner occupied property is a negative list for Ind AS 40. If we understood this, automatically we will know what is covered under Ind AS 40. So I'm just drawing a parallel for you to understand the concept. So owner occupied property, as I have said, you will apply Ind AS 16 for owner occupied property. There could be a scenario that the property which is owned by the owner is not used for production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes, but it is not owned by the owner. The entity might have owned the property and occupied for its production, supply of goods and services, or for administrative purposes, but under a lease. That means property is taken as a lease, and I am controlling that property for the use. For example, a factory land and buildings has been taken on lease. It is a owner occupied property. So only logic is Ind AS 16 applies to owner occupied property which is owned by the entity. That is the reason why owned property is also used in certain scenarios. Whereas if I do not own the property, but I control the property and I have a right to use that property under a lease, then that goes into Ind AS 16 property, Ind AS 116 leases, where we are saying there is a right of use asset. The right of use asset is like an intangible asset, but only thing is intangible asset standard Ind AS 38 specifically excludes that particular item. So we have to apply the principles of Ind AS 116 leases for that particular item. So what does it mean? I am a lessee. That means I don't own the property. I am a lessee. I have a right of use certain land and buildings over a period of time, and I have a contractual lease agreement. Then in that case, it is not owned owner property. It is a right of use the property, but it is occupied for my production purposes or supply of goods and services or maybe for corporate office purposes. In that case, Ind AS 116 should be applied. So Ind AS 16 or Ind AS 116 will come into the scenario for owner occupied property. If it is owned, Ind AS 16, if it is a right of use asset as a lessee, it is 116. So you are clear on that? Let us get into some sort of understanding what is not an investment property. Again, we are going to increase it, or maybe we are trying to say some more additional aspects to understand. These are also part of the negative list. What could be? I am having an asset which is intended to be sold in the ordinary course of business. Assets which are held for sale in the ordinary course of business. What does it mean? Is it an asset used for production of goods and services or for both? Or if it is held for, whether it is held for administrative purposes? Surely no, because my intention is to have the asset which are held for sale in the ordinary course of business. When I am stressing this, you will understand this is nothing but my inventory and it is covered by Ind AS 2. We have elaborate discussion on this, right? Now, There could be another scenario where it is owner occupied property. We have seen that in Ind AS 16, property, plant and equipment. This is another interesting concept which comes in. We are using the word owner occupied property instead of property, plant and equipment. So that is the reason why there is a confusion which comes in. Owner occupied purposes, owner occupied property means used for production of goods and services or both, or for administrative purposes. Suppose I have built a property, but I have given it to my employees as staff quarters. Majority of the factories or estates which will be normally having the staff quarters, or maybe in certain cases the even an IT and IT enabled services company or service industry also built properties and give it as uh, to its employees at concessional rate of rent. So in that case, it is not owner occupied property. It is employee occupied property. What I have to do with the employee occupied property? Interestingly, the employee occupied property is not covered under employee benefits, right? We were talking about Ind AS 19 employee benefits. In Ind AS 19, it's only the benefits which is given to the employees are how to be measured and accounted for. Expenses, how it has to be measured and accounted for, but it's not talking about any property, right? If a property has been given on concessional rent, or maybe at zero rent to an employee, there is an employee benefits coming in, are given to the employee. That employee benefit should be measured and recognized as per Ind AS 19. But the related property, that asset, what I have to do with that? Because it's not owner occupied property. The standard says that employee occupied property is also considered as owner occupied property because it is for the business of the entity. Okay, it is like for administrative purposes to retain my employees, and accordingly that will also get covered as per Ind AS 16 and not as an investment property. So very clear, employee occupied property owned by the entity will also come as per Ind AS 16. Now you can ask, because we have learned in the previous case, what happens if the entity takes certain properties on lease and give it to its employees? Goes without saying, if it is a right of use asset, you will apply the principles of Ind AS 116 leases, like what you have used right of use asset for your business purposes. It is also considered as a business purposes, even if it is given as an employee quarters, right? Or accommodation or guest house for the employees. So that is also get covered under Ind AS 16, sorry, Ind AS 116 if it is taken on lease. Let's understand this little bit with some certain examples. Land held for long-term capital appreciation rather than short-term sale in the ordinary course of business. Okay, so when I'm saying sale in the ordinary course of business, you may ask, sorry, Ind AS 2 proper inventories normally talks about a product. Why should you talk about a property under Ind AS 2? Suppose if the business of the entity itself is to deal with the properties. For example, I am a real estate uh, in real estate business. What I do? I purchase land, I sell land. I purchase property, I sell property. Or purchase property, develop it, and sell, and then sell it. It is an ordinary course of business. Any land or building which has been held for sale in the ordinary course of business goes into Ind AS 2. A classical example is a real estate transaction. So in this case, land held for long-term capital appreciation rather than short-term sale in the ordinary course of business, purely what? Ind AS 40. It's an investment property because your idea is not to sell in the ordinary course of business. So Ind AS 2 is not applicable, and you are not using in your business for production of goods and services or both, or for administrative purposes. So Ind AS 16 is not applicable. This is owned property, and accordingly Ind AS 116 is not applicable. Because we have covered all the negative list, we go into the category where investment property, what is the criteria for investment property? To recap, it is held for earning rentals or for capital appreciation or both. In this case, clearly spelled out that it is held for capital appreciation. Land is held for capital appreciation. Definitely it is for to be classified as investment property. Land held for currently undeterminable future use. Here I will take a moment. The standard says if I have a land or building or both, what I have to consider as a negative list, I must know what is the use or what is the future use of that particular item. If I say the present use is for my own business, that is for production of goods, services, or both, or administrative purposes, I will know that it is Ind AS 16. What is the future use? Suppose I have purchased some excess land near to the factory, and that has been designated for expansion of the factory at a later point of time. That is determined for future use as for the purpose of production of my goods and services. So again, that is goes under Ind AS 16. Suppose if I have not decided when I am purchasing the factory, there is a surplus land of another 100 acres, but I don't want others to interfere into that land, so I have purchased that property as well. But I don't know what is the use which I will do, whether I will be able to expand my factory to that level, whether I have the production capacity or sale capacity to that extent, and accordingly the future use is undetermined. In that case, what I have to do? Interestingly, the standard says if the future use is not currently determined. What do you mean by currently determined? On the date of the reporting, if it is not currently determined, what is the future use for the land or building or both, then that should also be considered as an investment property. Because you don't know any use, don't know what is the use, but you have invested. So that means it's an investment, and it is going to give you a capital appreciation on an indirect manner. So you have invested without knowing what is the future use. It is going for a capital appreciation. So it is coming under investment property. Initial case, by definition, we have said what is the present use. Now we are saying what is the undetermined future use. Even if it is undetermined, it should also be classified. It's a new concept which you have to keep it in your mind. Property in the process of construction or development for sale, that is in the ordinary course of business. What will happen? A real estate developer, we have seen that he is constructing and going to sell it at a later point of time once it is ready. Naturally, it is a WIP, goes into Ind AS 2, not part of investment property, not an investment property, but will be covered as per Ind AS 2 inventories as work in progress in respect of the real estate business. Now, owner occupied property awaiting disposal. So I have a property which is used for my business, but I am planning to dispose it of. Whether it is an investment property, in this case, we are bringing in one more standard for us to understand. The moment a property, plant and equipment has been held for disposal, we learned this in Ind AS 16, property, plant equipment. It's a non-current asset held for sale, means it is covered by Ind AS 105. And to that extent, that owner occupied property will be reclassified from property, plant and equipment and shown under non-current asset held for sale. It will not be depreciated, will always be stated at lower of cost and fair value less cost to sell. That's what we have learned as property held for disposal, right? So the moment a owner occupied property has been awaiting disposal, it is not going to be my capital appreciation. It's not for earning rentals. So definitely not covered as investment property. It should be covered under Ind AS 105. Moves out of Ind AS 16 and goes to Ind AS 105. Property that is being constructed or developed for future use as investment property. Interesting point. The third one we have said with the intention of future sale. We said it's inventory, where the intention is for letting it to others or for capital appreciation. That is future use as investment property. Whatever is construction which is happening is not WIP. Whatever is getting constructed is not capital work in progress. It is investment property in under development. In progress is not a correct word. That's the reason why I'm using the word investment property under development. So this is also covered under Ind AS 40 and not under any other standard. So future use is determined. So it goes to investment property. Future use is not determined. Still it goes to investment property. Current use is determined. You have to see what is the use based on which investment property category should be applied. Okay. Now we are clear about what is owner occupied, what is held for sale in the ordinary course of business, and what will actually fall into Ind AS 40 property, plant and equipment. Sorry, Ind AS 40 investment property. Okay. Now, suppose a property is held for more than one purpose. A portion is used for business purposes, a portion is given on rent. How to split and do the accounting? There are some guidances available in the standard, and let us see the guidance. The guidance says if you are able to split the two purposes, that is what is held for earning rentals or capital appreciation and what is used in the business of the entity or in production of goods, services, blah blah blah, etc., which falls under Ind AS 16. If you are able to split the purpose and identify the property, then what is owner occupied will be dealt with as per Ind AS 16. What is held for rental income or for capital appreciation is under Ind AS 40. Normally, when we are talking about a dual purpose, the same property might have been used. For example, in majority of the cases, the corporate building might be some 7 floors or 8 floors. Only 2 to 3 floors might have been used for the owner for its own business, the entity for its own business. That portion, if it is able to be clearly earmarked, it goes to Ind AS 16. So you have to follow the principles: disclosure, recognition, measurement principle, impairment testing, depreciation, etc., as according to Ind AS 16. Balance 5 floors, if it is given on rental, that is an investment property, not used for the owner's business. Then it should be split and shown as investment property. Same property may be split into two categories. Suppose if I am not able to split, there is no possibility of identifying it. So what is the area which has been occupied? What is the floor which has been occupied? So how I will be able to determine that? For example, if I am saying that the entire 8th floor is occupied by the owner, a portion of that or maybe any area can also be occupied for certain administrative purposes of one of its subsidiary. But I am not able to determine what is the square feet which has been used, what is the floor which has been used. They are using the facilities which is available in that particular property. In that case, it is very difficult for me to split that specifically based on certain reasonable basis. In that case, everything will be considered as Ind AS 16, the owner occupied property. So able to split based on a reasonable measure, then we can split that into owner occupied and the investment property category, and that portion will be, each respective portions will be applied under the respective standard. Suppose unable to split, that's what we are saying. So what we have to do is, suppose if the owner occupation is insignificant, I'm not able to say what is the total area which has been used by the owner and what is the area which has been used but the owner occasionally uses a portion of that. Very rare circumstances, but hypothetically we will take that. Theoretically we should understand. So suppose the area which has been occupied or the portion occupied by the owner which could not be separately split. Okay, in that case it could be a scenario of unable to split. If the owner occupied is insignificant, what will happen? It goes to Ind AS 40 uh, investment property. Suppose owner occupied is significant portion and the rental income is insignificant, you have to go to Ind AS 16 property plant and equipment. Let me take an example. For example, a table space has been used by the corporate office, or maybe they have a conference hall. That conference hall is also used by the subsidiary and also by the owner. I mean, by the parent company. Whenever there is a meeting, they will come and use it. But subsidiary uses the full floor. So it's an insignificant use by the owner, and to that extent, we are not able to split exactly what is the portion because it is used by both the parties, and to that extent, it may be an example for you to understand where we will say the entire property is investment property because owner occupation is insignificant. Okay, let's go into some quick examples for us to understand this concept. Here it owns 15 floors where it uses 5 floors for office. The remaining 10 floors are leased out to various tenants under operating lease. According to the law, the company could sell the legal title of the 10 floors while retaining the legal title for other 5 floors. So very simple. It says that it's able to split each floor. So to that extent, the 10 floors which are given on rent has to be considered as investment property. Balance 5, which is owner occupied, should be treated under Ind AS 16. So very simple concept. And unable to split, I have explained property in which a portion of the asset is used by both. Maybe only the time factor could be an assessment, but the ownership of the property cannot be determined. Okay, that's, I mean, ownership in sense, what is the area which has been controlled, which can be treated as an asset. Usage of the asset, it's possible. So that is the reason why we say insignificant portion is occupied by the owner. We apply Ind AS 40 in full. Another example for you to understand, he owns a hotel which includes a casino, but the casino is in a separate building. So who are the users are tourists and non-resident visitors. That's a casino, right? The owner operates the hotel and other facilities in the hotel resort with the exception of the casino which has been sold or leased out under a finance lease. Let us take the example as it's leased out, not using the word sold, because when we have sold, it's already derecognized. Can be sold as future use. That is what it comes in. So future use for sale to others, then to that extent, it is an investment property for capital appreciation. That's the reason why can be sold is also included. Leased out, earning rentals from others. So what happens in this case? There is a resort and there is a casino attached to that resort. The resort is run by the owner, whereas the casino is leased out. So what happens? The casino itself is a investment property or a owner occupied property. The purpose for which I am maintaining the casino is to rental to others, and it generates independent cash flows other than from other assets, right? Largely not dependent on the cash flow generated by the resort, because we are saying the patrons are usually the tourist and non-resident visitors, not for the residents who are in the hotel. So they may be using it, but normally it is used by the tourist and non-resident visitors. To that extent, it generates an independent, largely generating cash flows, largely independent of the other assets of the entity. Other asset is the balance portion of the resort. So to that extent, whether it falls into the criteria, that casino is falls into the criteria. Let us see the other facts. The casino will be leased to an independent operator. Entity has no further involvement in the casino. That means it is not running that casino. Casino operator will not be prepared to operate it without the existence of the hotel and other facilities. What it happens is, unless the hotel and resort is available, he doesn't want to operate the casino. Otherwise, he will not get more people, right? So when there is a hotel, people will come to the hotel and they will also part of the casino. So casino operator puts a condition that there should be a hotel. Whether that impacts the situation, that largely cash flows are generated largely independent of the other asset, it's only a condition, right? It can be run independently also. So to that extent, in this scenario, the other facilities or hotel and other facilities are considered as property plant equipment, whereas the casino should be treated as an investment property, right? You are very, very clear on what should be classified as investment property with all these examples. Let us move on to the next possible question or next possible guidance to understand whether a property is owner occupied property or it is an investment property. Suppose the when I have given this to others to earn rental, I also provide certain services to the occupants, to the residents of the leased property. I am also giving certain services. When the services are ancillary services is nothing but ancillary services. The point of consideration is, if the ancillary services are significant to the lease, it says it is a owner occupied property. A classical example which I can give to you is, I have land and buildings on which I have built a hotel. The hotel rooms are rented to various people, short term or long term, whatever case may be. I'm earning rental. So it is built with a specific purpose to give it on rental to others. In the process, it also has a capital appreciation. It also generates cash flow largely independent of other assets, because it is only land, buildings, and any other assets attached to that. It generates cash flows largely independent of other assets. But if I say I also provide services to the residents of the hotels or the occupants of the hotel, which is significant, then it says you are running a hotel and not just letting out a property. Because it's a significant services. Your major income is coming from the services, and that services are provided to your occupants is incidental. So if you see the hotel income, majority of the hotel income comes from the services and rather than the occupancy. And one example which I can also give it to you is, I have a hotel, or I may be having a commercial convention center. I'm giving it on rent. What happens is, the convention center, if I'm operating like this, if the convention center is just given on rent, it's an investment property. But if I'm saying that if you wanted to occupy the convention center, you have to take all other ancillary services like my services for catering, my services for your decorations, the lighting, all your logistics arrangement, everything should come as a package. I'm running a business, right? And I'm not just running a ancillary, running a or having a property which is just given for rental purposes. So the question of consideration is, if it is significant ancillary services, I am running a business, and to that extent, that property, even though it is actually given on rental to others, should be treated as a owner occupied property, and owner occupied property will be fall under Ind AS 16. Don't get carried away with owner occupied property means I should be occupying that. Owner occupied property here classified that if the property is owned and used for the purposes of production of goods or services or both, or for administrative purposes. That is what owner occupied property according to Ind AS 40. So the moment I own a property but I am giving it on rent, we have a question whether you are occupying it or you are giving to others on as an investment property. There we are trying to find out whether other circumstances are trying to help us to understand that whatever we are discussing is not in the investment property, because main business is to run that hotel, run that convention center, and give ancillary services which are significant than the rental income. In that case, the entire thing has to be considered. The rent and related property should be considered as owner occupied property under Ind AS 16. Suppose the ancillary services are insignificant, it is considered as investment property. Let us take one example. Maybe it is part of that. We will see that. So you have to always apply your judgment to determine whether the ancillary services are significant or insignificant. Because the moment you are concluding that it's significant, you are moving out of Ind AS 40. So judgment is very, very important, and the fact pattern of the cases are very, very important. You have to apply your judgment on those areas. Let's take one example to understand. The owner of an office building provides security and maintenance services to the lessee who occupy the building. It is considered to be significant service, whether it is an investment property. The moment I say ancillary services which has been provided, so that means what I am doing, I have built a property and I am telling that I will also provide you with the complete security, complete maintenance activity. What you are supposed to come is as a king, come, use the premises, pay me the consolidated payment for the occupation as well as the service. Go out. No worry for you for creating the infrastructure. I will take care of that infrastructure. That means it is ancillary services is which has been provided by the owner is the ancillary services provided by the owner is significant. Sorry, there is a typo error. It is significant in this case, and accordingly, it's an investment property. Please correct in your notes that there is a typo error. Ancillary services provided the owner is significant, and accordingly, it's an investment property. Okay. Entity owns and manages a hotel. Services provided to the guest are significant to the arrangement as a whole. In this case, it is again owner occupied property, and to that extent, sorry, in this case, I think that the previous example, this is correct. Here, this is wrong. We are saying it is considered to be an insignificant service. So general security and maintenance alone I have given, not significant service. You change the fact pattern to be considered to be an insignificant service, meager service. And because it's insignificant, it is an investment property. The moment I conclude that it's a significant, then we have to consider that as owner occupied property. It cannot be investment property. Only when we are seeing the next example, we are getting clear that there is a typo error in this. In the fact pattern, there is a typo error, not on the conclusion. Here, we are talking about management runs a hotel and services provided are significant, then it becomes the property plan equipment or owner occupied property and not an investment property. Okay. Again, I am repeating that there is a typo error in the first case where it should be changed as it is considered to be an insignificant service. Then the result conclusion is correct. If we say that it's a significant service, the conclusion is incorrect. It should also be owner occupied service. The intention was to show what is investment property, but unfortunately there is a typo error. Let's take another example. Property has been leased to and occupied by its parent and another subsidiary. Whether it is an investment property? I think I'm bringing a new concept, or maybe I'm trying to touch upon a concept which we have dealt with regularly, is standalone financial statement and consolidated financial statement. What is happening? Parent has let out the property to the subsidiary. So in the standalone financial statement of the subsidiary, if there is any right of use asset, the subsidiary will consider that as per Ind AS 116 leases. For the parent, because it has let out on hire, the property is held for earning rentals by giving it to subsidiary. That's a next situation. So in the standalone financial statement of the parent, it is not owner occupied property, that portion which has been given to the subsidiary. So that portion will be treated as an investment property in the standalone financial statement of the parent. What happens when we are talking about consolidated financial statement? In consolidated financial statement, the entire group's financial statement, that is a standalone of the parent, as well as its subsidiaries, associates, and joint ventures are consolidated and gets into one single financial statement of the group. In that case, the moment the subsidiary's business is line by line consolidated and assets are line by line consolidated, what happens? Whatever is treated as investment property because it's let out on rent to my subsidiary in the standalone financial statement now becomes owner occupied property because it is used for the business of the group as a whole in the consolidated financial statement. Standalone, it is investment property, but in consolidated financial statement, it will be owner occupied property. So what you have to do, whenever you are making the analysis, you should also see from the perspective of the preparer of the financial statement. If the preparer is a standalone entity, it is an investment property. If the preparer is a group which prepares a consolidated financial statement, then it becomes a owner occupied property, right? Owner occupied property means it goes to Ind AS 16. So the reclassification happens in the consolidated financial statements as a consolidation adjustment. Okay, let's move on. So you should also see from the perspective of the group in respect of whatever you have concluded may also change. Now let's take an example or maybe several examples to understand what are all the items which can be considered still as investment property and are to be considered under other thing. Maybe recap our understanding. Owned by a company and leased out under an operating lease. So necessarily it is treated as what? Given on rent. So Ind AS 40 should be applied. Investment property should be applied. Held as right to use asset and leased out under an operating lease. Again, there is a right to use and I have given sublease. That is also the right of use asset is also becoming my investment property covered under Ind AS 40. Held as right of use asset and leased out under a finance lease. Ind AS 116 comes in. If it is given on operating lease, Ind AS 40 because rental income let on hire. Whereas I have leased out on finance lease, what happens is the ownership itself or significant risk related to the ownership is passed on to the lessee. So there is no rental which has been earned. Whatever I am collecting is my principal as well as the interest. So it has to go to Ind AS 116 leases and to be considered as per leases standard. Property which has been acquired with a development with a view to development and resale. Future use has been determined as development and resale. So Ind AS 2 comes in the ordinary course of business. We have already seen. Partially owner occupied and partially leased out under an operating lease. So the portion which can be split as owner occupied will be Ind AS 16. The balance will be Ind AS 40. able to split is what we have to apply the principles. If we are unable to split, then we will apply based on owner occupied is significant, Ind AS 16, owner occupied is insignificant, Ind AS 40 for the entire property. That's what we have seen, able to split when there is a dual purpose. Let's take some more examples. Property occupied by employees paying rent at less than market rate, concessional rate we have already seen. It is still under owner occupied property. Ind AS 16 should be applied. Investment property which is held for sale. Ind AS 105. We have reclassified the investment property to be sold. The moment I reclassify, it moves out of investment property and it has to be treated as per Ind AS 105. Existing investment property that is being redeveloped for continued use as investment property. So there is a investment property, I'm demolishing it and redeveloping it, because earlier I was having a smaller space to occupy, give it on rental. Now if I am remodeling it, I will have more space. So I am redeveloping it. Whether that property loses its characteristics? No, it will continue to be an investment property because the future use is also decided. It's a continued use for the purposes as investment property. Okay, now we are very, very clear about what you mean by investment property, what you mean by owner occupied property, what you have to do when there is a dual purpose for which a property has been used. And we have also seen, based on the ancillary services provided to the person who is taking on lease, whether we have to classify as investment property or owner occupied property. So we have also seen cases where it will fall under other standards as well. For example, when it is the asset is held for sale in the ordinary course of business, we consider that as part of Ind AS 2. Where it is held for sale, we are classifying as part of Ind AS 105. So we know now what should be considered as investment property. We have reached that stage. Pakka clarity is available. The moment I have clarified that this is an investment property, the next point comes is when I will recognize that as an investment property in the financial statement. It says probable future economic benefits will flow to the entity. Cost of the investment property can be measured reliably. This is what I have said in the initial stage. Nothing but what is the criteria for recognizing asset, whether it is inventory, whether it is a property, plant, equipment, whether it's an intangible asset, whether it is an investment property, all are going to a basic definition. What is an asset? If it is probable that future economic benefits will flow to the entity and the cost of the property or the asset can be reliably measured, then it will be recognized as an asset. That's the basic principle. Only here is whether the cost or whatever the property which we are talking about is for the purpose of rental to others or for capital appreciation. Future economic benefits may be rentals which is coming in at present as well as in the future course, or future economic benefits may be a capital appreciation. Both is possible for investment property. And if the cost of the investment property can be reliably measured, both conditions, if it is satisfied, it meets the criteria of an asset because it's held for sale, held for earning rentals or for capital appreciation or for both, it falls into the definition of investment property. Only in that situation you will recognize an asset as an investment property. This definition applicable to every asset. That's what you have to keep it in your mind. What is classified as investment property according to the definitions, whatever we have seen so far, we are testing whether it meets the recognition criteria of an asset. If so, we recognize that. Suppose if the investment property is held by a lessee, assuming that the entity has leased certain property from another owner on a long-term basis, and there is a right of use asset, whether the right of use asset should be considered as my investment property? No, because the right of use asset of a lessee has been specifically covered under Ind AS 116 leases, and to that extent that property should not be looked into. So in other words, leased properties are normally goes into Ind AS 116. Leased means I am having it as a leased one. When I am giving it on lease, it will be falling under Ind AS 40 investment property if it is an operating lease. If it is a finance lease, Ind AS 116 comes in. You have to be very, very clear on when the standard and which standard should be applied at what circumstances. What happens to the subsequent cost? So we said redevelopment. There is a possibility that the lift might have been worn out. So we are replacing that lift. So simple principle comes in component cost approach, whatever we have seen under Ind AS 16, property, plant and equipment, where we said the new component will be capitalized and the carrying amount of the existing component which has been replaced will be charged to the profit and loss account. Simple concept is what we are talking about here. Cost of replacement of parts is capitalized and the carrying amount of the replaced parts are derecognized. That's what we are trying to say. But of course, there should be one more condition, that it should meet the criteria of an asset. What do you mean by that? There should be future economic benefits arising out of it. If it is not, it will not be part of it. For example, I am replacing a door which has been maybe it is damaged. So I'm replacing with a new door. Whether I will capitalize the new door, it is a routine maintenance expenses. You have to be very, very careful whether it is going to create a future economic benefits or it's a routine maintenance expenses. Again, we have considered that under Ind AS 16, routine repairs and maintenance should be charged to P&L and it is not meeting the criteria of future economic benefits being flowing to the entity and accordingly not meets the criteria of an asset. So subsequent cost should be considered for capitalization only with that principle of whether it meets the criteria of an asset. If it is not meeting the recognition criteria of an asset, charge it to P&L. Okay. Again, if you are saying we are going back to the fundamental concept and recapping the fundamental concept for application in the present situation. Now, let's take an example. Here, the building is owned and it is used for earning rentals. So very clearly, it's an investment property. Carrying amount is 50 lakhs. Recently replaced an interior walls of the building and the cost of new interior walls are 5 lakhs. The original walls having a carrying amount of 1 lakh rupees. How the subsequent cost should be accounted for. Interestingly, suppose if I am doing this as a routine maintenance expenses, we can simply say forget about whatever you are talking about, charge the entire 5 lakh rupees as an expenditure. But here in this fact pattern, it says replacing the interior walls in a hotel or any property which has been given, facelift has to happen on a regular basis. It attracts more visitors. So future economic benefits will normally considered to come in. It is not a routine maintenance expenses. In that case, what I have to do is I have to add the new cost which has been incurred. That's a 5 lakh should be added to the original cost. Carrying value is 50 lakhs plus 5 lakhs minus the replaced component. That is the existing carrying amount. Is no more existing, no? So that I am removing it. So the carrying value of the investment property now after the subsequent cost is 54 lakhs. Okay. What is the recognition criteria we have seen? What is the next point of our accounting standard? It says you have to put a value to that. What is the value and what are all the costs which can be associated with that to be considered? So that should be a guidance. That is what we are considering. What is the measurement at initial recognition? When the investment property comes for the first time into the financial statement of an entity, what is the value to be attributed to that? What it says is that general principle is should be initially measured at cost, no fair value measurement. Okay. And all the transaction cost incurred should also be capitalized. For example, I am purchasing a land and buildings with the intention of giving it on lease or hire, and I have incurred certain stamp duty, incurred certain legal fees for registration purposes. I have incurred certain brokerages. All these are transaction cost for bringing the asset into my ownership. So to that extent, whatever is incurred as a transaction cost should also be included as part of the cost. Anything comes to your mind? Yes, nothing but how we have taken the cost in respect of a property, plant and equipment. Cost of acquisition, any directly attributable cost to bringing the asset for the intended use is added to that. That is comes here. Suppose if I got some rebates and discounts, what will happen? My cost will automatically come down. That is exactly the general principle. Suppose if it's a deferred payment, I purchase an investment property, but the payment towards that investment property will be done beyond normal credit period, over a period of time, 2 years or 3 years. What we have learned already, the implicit interest should be unwinded, and that portion should be treated as part of your finance cost. So otherwise, what is the consideration paid minus what is the cash price of that particular investment property is a financing component which is added because you are repaying over a period of time, not immediately. And to that extent, that deferred payment consists of a finance element. That finance element should be separated and treated as unamortized finance cost, accounted as finance charges as per Ind AS 23 over the period of repayment of the liability. That is exactly we have seen even under Ind AS 16 property plant equipment, even under Ind AS 2 inventories, even under Ind AS 38 intangible assets. So same principle we are uh, identifying. Exchange of an asset, this is also we have dealt with the same principle. In that case, fair value should be taken into consideration unless fair value cannot be determined. Okay, this also we have seen in Ind AS 38 at length. So, what is the fair value of the asset coming in should be considered as the value to be passed in the books of accounts. And in case if it is not able to determine what is the fair value of the asset given up on exchange should be considered. If both are not considered, then the cost or the carrying amount of the asset given up should be considered. This is what your principle for acquired through exchange of an asset. Suppose if it's a right of use asset by a lessee, then we have to consider what is the net present value of the future lease payment as the right of use asset. This is coming under Ind AS 116. It is not under investment property. Now, let us take one worked out example to understand this concept in a better manner. So, what happens when we are talking about a situation where we have uh, an entity purchased a building on 1st of May, certain date. The moment you are having a date which is not the starting date or ending date, be careful about what is the period related cost which has to be capitalized. So that is the way in which you have to approach the particular question. The moment I get something which is talking about a date, they are trying to put a catch on that without giving explanatory statement that there is some associated cost for the period which may be recognizable as cost of the asset or to be treated as an expenditure. So but we have to be careful the moment we are seeing this. So here what are all the costs which they have said? They have this purchase price is funded by a loan. They are trying to come out with a borrowing cost. Borrowing cost is based on the period. So we have to consider the period for which the cost has been incurred or the interest has been incurred. So that is what I am saying. The moment somebody is giving a date, be careful whether any time or period related cost has to be considered. Other than that, what the other information is there? Cost of building 30 lakhs, property transfer taxes or stamp duty is 1 lakh rupees, direct legal cost is 20,000 rupees. All these items are transaction cost, we have seen that the transaction cost has to be capitalized. This property has been redeveloped in the same year into retail shops for rental under operating lease to third parties. That means the purpose itself is for redevelopment as an investment property or giving it on rent. So it has to be classified as per Ind AS 30. What is the redevelopment cost which they have incurred? Land building has been purchased at the original cost, and they have also incurred certain associated costs. So 30 lakhs plus 1 lakh 20, 31.2 lakhs has been initially incurred. Subsequent redevelopment comes as planning permission 2 lakh, construction cost 2 lakhs, and refundable purchase tax included in the above is 40,000. What we have seen, if the taxes are refundable, I am getting a separate asset. I am going to claim it from the government. So to that extent, it is not part of my investment property, and to that extent, it has to be reduced from the construction cost. So for example, it's a input credit which is permitted. So to that extent, that 40,000 should be reduced from 7 lakh rupees. So 31.2 plus 2 lakhs plus 7 lakhs minus 40,000 will be my cost as such. And what happens? The redevelopment was completed and deployed on 2nd September. So there is 1st May to 2nd September. There is some dates which is involved. Anything which has to be added to that, I said it is taken on borrowing, period cost is there, and it has given May. But I have not considered any interest. Can you identify the reason for that? Again, there is a catch. 1st May it is purchased and substantially ready for the intended use on 2nd September. What is the period between this? May, June, July, August, 4 months and 2 days. 4 months and 2 days gives a clarity for us whether it is a qualifying asset as per Ind AS 23 borrowing cost. Qualifying asset means it should take a substantial period for getting the asset ready for the intended use. Substantial period is normally 12 months and above. Here it's 4 months, so it is not a qualifying asset. If it is not a qualifying asset, the related borrowing cost cannot be capitalized. It should be charged to the profit and loss account. To that extent, that borrowing cost or the finance cost, even though so many informations are given relating to borrowing, relating to the date on which the loan has been taken, everything has been given, but we are not going to capitalize any borrowing cost into that because it is not a qualifying asset. Suppose if you are just finishing with this solution, that this is the cost of building at initial recognition. If I am the examiner, I will give you the mark. But whether I will give the full mark or I will be tend to give a complete mark, assuming that you are making a step loss in refundable loss. But if you are saying that it's not a qualifying asset, and accordingly, even though this has been bought by means of taking a specific borrowing, the related finance cost is not included and it will be charged to the profit and loss account, I will be tempted to give some additional marks. So whatever additional information which you have learned from this, you can also give as a narrative. Okay. So the examiner will understand that what you are trying to do is that you know the entire concept, but maybe there is a slip that you have not considered the refundable purchases. He will have uh, a consideration for a typo error and give you certain additional marks. So this is a way in which you have to win the heart of the examiner by showing that you know the concept. Maybe in the examination pressure you have missed certain aspects. Okay, so that could be a narrative which you can give because it's not a qualifying asset, borrowing cost is not getting capitalized. Now let's take another example just for us to understand. 1 crore is the purchase cost. It can be paid in full amount or pay it over 2 years for a total cost of 1.2 crore. what is the cost at which the building has to be treated as per investment property, assuming that it is purchased for capital appreciation. Okay. If I am saying that I have opted for cash price, I will capitalize the investment property at 1 crore, no further requirement. If I decided to apply the second option of payment, that I will pay it over 2 years period, then what I will do, I will still capitalize the investment property at 1 crore only. The 20 lakh, which is the difference between the cash price of 1 crore and the consideration of 1.2 crore, is a finance cost. That finance cost should be apportioned or charged to P&L account separately, not should be part of the cost. Cost should be 1 crore still. The 20 lakh should be accounted over the 2 year period based on the amount outstanding, or otherwise I should use the word based on the effective interest rate method. You have to apply the accounting as per Ind AS 23 borrowing cost, because it's not a qualifying asset. Land has been already purchased. It is not having substantial period of time. Then in that case, the 20 lakhs which I have paid should be treated as part of expenditure and not part of the asset cost. It is not a transaction cost. So that is what we are talking about. 20 lakhs should be treated as an interest expenditure over the period of 2 years. So here they have given straight away. Suppose if they are giving without this and they are talking about say discounting rate, what do you have to do? Implicit rate of interest has to be applied and you have to unwind the portion. You assume that what is the consideration paid is inclusive of interest component, so unwind the interest portion. That's we have seen enough number of times in the previous sessions. So you just apply your mind. Here it's very what do you call it? Simple way of presenting. 20 lakhs is straight away known as finance cost, but majority of the cases only implicit interest will be there. Rate of interest or market rate of interest or cost of capital or weighted average cost of capital of the entity might have been given. In that case, you should understand that there is a deferred payment term, so there is an implicit finance cost. I have to arrive at the implicit finance cost, but by unwinding the finance cost from the total consideration. Okay. After unwinding the interest portion, the interest portion is unamortized interest expenditure. Only the balance will be cost of my investment property, right? That is what we have also seen in majority of the cases. Here let us see what it says. Entity owns a hotel that it leases out under an operating lease to a hotel management group. Hotel is situated on land leased by the government for 999 years with no transfer of title to the entity at the end of the lease period. Hotel building has an useful life expected to be approximately 40 years. There is no provision in the lease to return the land with the building intact at the end of the 999 years lease. The fact pattern is talking about two aspects. One is land is not owned by the entity. It is taken on 999 years lease. Building has been, the superstructure has been constructed. That is controlled by the entity. And that has been given on rent to a third party on operating lease. So when I'm saying it is given on rent on operating lease, it is inside the, or within the scope of Ind AS 40. If I have said that it's given on finance lease, it is outside the scope of Ind AS 40 and goes to Ind AS 116. So what is the accounting treatment I have to do? Here there are two items involved. One is the land, another is the property. Land will be treated as per operating lease under 116, right of use asset for 999 years as per Ind AS 116, and the building is superstructure is constructed with a view for giving it on lease, on operating lease or rental earning. So to that extent, that will get covered as per investment property. What is the meaning of that useful life of 40 years? The moment I am using the word useful life of 40 years, meaning that the entire superstructure has to be depreciated over 40 years or 999 years, whichever is earlier. Wherever an asset is leased out, lease term or the economic useful life, whichever is earlier has to be applied. Lease term is 999 years. At the end of the lease term, there is no responsibility for the entity to give the building also back to them. So if the building is demolished, I can just give the land. If the building is intact, I will give it. The building is damaged, with that I will give. That is the way in which the lease condition says. There is no provision in the lease agreement to return the land intact at the return the building intact at the end of 999 years. That means only the land has to be returned. Building is superstructure which is my control, but I cannot use it for more than 40 years. So the useful life is lesser than the lease term, so I have to depreciate over 40 years. So when I am using this word depreciate over 40 years, you will ask a question, sir, investment property should also be depreciated? Keep on the back of your mind that particular question, whether investment property should also be depreciated. We'll keep it in our mind. So the moment I talk about investment property should be uh, whether it has to be depreciated, the other question comes is whether investment property should be tested for impairment also. Both keep it on your back of your mind. Let's move on. What is the subsequent measurement? What is subsequent measurement? Initial acquisition I have recognized at cost plus the transaction cost. I have started giving it on leases, and the next reporting period what I have to do, that is a subsequent measurement. Every reporting period which is after the initial acquisition, reporting period or periods, what is the measurement I have to apply? If it is held for sale, Ind AS 105, it is not in Ind AS 40. If I originally have purchased as an investment property, but I have reclassified as held for sale, I move out of Ind AS 40 and goes to Ind AS 105, where we have said it should be recognized at cost or fair value less cost to sell, whichever is lower, no depreciation will be charged. That's what Ind AS 105. If I have not classified that, but it is not owned by me, it is taken on lease as a lessee, then the right of use asset has to be treated as per Ind AS 116 initially as well as subsequently, because there is no property involved in this, or I don't own any property, I don't have a control over any property, it's only a right of use asset. So the right of use asset, since specifically dealt with under Ind AS 116, initial as well as subsequent measurement you have to only go into Ind AS 116. In all other cases where 105 is not applicable or 116 is not applicable, it's an important consideration. In all other cases, you have to apply the cost model as per Ind AS 16. I asked you to keep something on the back of your mind. Now the answer comes in. All other cases, cost model as per Ind AS 16 property plant equipment. It is not saying that you have to account as per Ind AS 16, or it is not saying you have to classify it as Ind AS 16. The measurement principle, subsequent measurement principles will be, if you are applying a cost model for a property, plant and equipment, what are all the things you do will squarely apply when you are subsequently measuring an investment property which is not held for sale, which is not a right of use asset. What does it mean? Cost model as per Ind AS 16 says subsequent measurement should be consider the related depreciation, consider the related impairment of asset. In other words, the carrying amount is nothing but the cost of the asset, or the carrying amount in case if it is a subsequent period, carrying amount plus additional cost incurred during the period for redevelopment, etc., which meets the recognition criteria, minus accumulated depreciation minus accumulated impairment loss. The moment I am saying cost model says subsequent measurement is minus of accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss, an investment property should also be tested for impairment if the market value or the recoverable amount is lower than the carrying amount, and also to be depreciated for its economic useful life. So both should be applied. For the application of depreciation, for the application of impairment of asset, it says you use the cost model given in Ind AS 16. Instead of defining the entire thing again in Ind AS 40, it simply says cross refers to the cost model approach. Cost model approach says depreciation should be charged, impairment should be tested if there is indication of impairment. If there is no indication of impairment, I will not test it for impairment, right? So same logic should be applied. Only exception is if it is reclassified as held for sale, 105 will be applied. If it is only a right of use asset as per an operating lease arrangement, I am the lessee, then 116 will apply. In all other cases, subsequent measurement will be in accordance with the cost model principles of Ind AS 16. Don't get confused that I will classify that as per Ind AS 16. Only the measurement principles will be taken from Ind AS 16, applied, and I will continue to show that as an investment property as per Ind AS 40. Now you are clear on subsequent measurement. We have to think about transfer to investment property or transfer from investment property. That means one item previously investment property, now reclassified to some other category. For example, held for sale. What is the accounting treatment? Previously, it was treated as owner occupied property, treated under Ind AS 16. Now comes to Ind AS 40 because no more I am going to use it. I am going to let it on lease because I have some other property which has been developed. This property has been used for renting to others. So in that case, the transfer to investment property from other category, transfer out from investment property to other category. What is the accounting treatment? Very simple. Transfers from investment property to owner occupied property, carrying amount of investment property will be considered as the cost of the owner occupied property. On the date of reclassifying an investment property to owner occupied property, what I'm going to do is, what is the carrying amount of investment property? That becomes the cost of acquisition of the owner occupied property for Ind AS 16, right? So there is nothing is going to hit my P&L account. Same carrying amount is transferred as the cost of acquisition of the owner occupied property. Suppose from investment property is reclassified. For example, so far I have kept my land for the purposes of capital appreciation, but now putting it for a development process in the real estate purposes, it becomes automatically as an inventory, goes to Ind AS 2. The carrying amount of the investment property will become the cost of inventory. Similar to this, only thing is the first category goes to Ind AS 16, second category goes to Ind AS 2. The deemed cost of subsequent accounting in case of transfer to an investment property will be the fair value on the date of transfer. Here it is an interesting point. Suppose anything which you are transferring into the investment property, what it says is that you have to do a fair value of the previous item or PPE or whatever, and then that should be treated as your cost of investment property, and the difference will automatically go into your P&L account. Okay, that is a category. It normally happens whenever you are reclassifying certain items as part of this. Let us take one example, which is a worked out example, where we talk about transfer to investment property. So what it happens, in this case, we have the building which has been there on 1st of April. Originally, it is used as a factory building and cost model. So no revaluation, no fair valuation, nothing. Decline in the demand for the product, the company has now decided to rent out the factory to a third party, but it's happening from 1st April 2015. So 4 years it is used, 2002 March, 3 March, 4 March, 5 March. 4 years it has been used, and naturally accumulated depreciation should be reduced to arrive at what is the cost. What is the fair value of the building should also be considered, because we said that transfer in we have to consider a little differently. Here what happens is 1 crore is the original cost. 4 years depreciation is for 10 years. 4 years I have already depreciated. So on a straight line basis, assuming that 10 lakhs into 4, 40 lakhs has already gone. 60 lakhs will be the carrying amount, but the fair value is 80 lakhs. What I have to do? What it says is that you have to initially recognize this at 60 lakhs. In fact, I was having a worry when I'm explaining the fair value whether there is a typo error. Because I was saying that you have to do a fair value and take that as a deemed cost. Actually, that is incorrect because that rule is applicable if I'm talking about IAS 40. In IAS 40, there are two models which is applicable. One model says you can do a cost model of investment property. Another, it says that it has to be it can be on fair value model. Once you do a fair valuation model, that principle applies. But Ind AS 40 not allows the fair value model, so that last bullet is incorrect. So I will change it when I'm going back to the slide. This comes the only thing which you have to consider is the fair value should be taken into consideration to determine whether impairment has to be tested on that particular date where you are reclassifying it. In this particular case, the carrying amount of the property, plant, and equipment on the date of conversion into investment property is 60 lakhs, whereas the fair value is 80 lakhs. So recoverable amount is higher than the carrying amount. No impairment is required. Suppose if I say the fair value is only 55 lakhs. So 5 lakhs will be charged to P&L account. The value of the investment property will be taken at 55 lakhs. That is the reason why the fair value should be considered. Whereas what I have explained earlier is as per Ind AS 40. Here Ind AS 40 it is as per IAS 40. The IAS 40 is missing here, so it creates a wrong understanding. The deemed cost for subsequent accounting in case of transfer to an investment property shall be the fair value on the date of the transfer if the fair value is lower than the carrying amount of the asset. That should be additionally added. So that means impairment should be tested. Suppose if I apply, because it gives a different meaning, as if the fair value should be replaced. In the example, it gives a feeling that 60 lakhs should be replaced by 80 lakhs if we have this. There is something which you have to add it to the note. The deemed cost of subsequent accounting in case of transfer to an investment property shall be the fair value as on the date of transfer if the fair value is lower than the carrying amount of the cost of the carrying amount of the asset. So suppose in the example which we have seen, 60 lakhs is the carrying amount, but the fair value is 80 lakhs. We have considered no change is required. Suppose if 55 lakhs, we have said that only 55 lakhs should be capitalized as part of the cost of investment property on the transfer in, and the balance 5 lakhs should be charged to P&L account. Suppose if I am talking about IAS, this statement without any addition automatically goes into that. Even in IAS 40, I should have applied fair value model. If the fair value model is applied, I have to do a fair valuation on the date of reclassification and take the difference between the carrying amount and the fair value, even if it is a gain to the P&L account. That's what IAS 40. But in IAS 40, it should be used for the purpose of testing whether impairment should be considered on the date of transfer. Add something additional, shall be the fair value as on the date of transfer if and only if the fair value is lower than the carrying value of the asset transferred into the investment property. Okay, that will give you more clarity. For me, it is easy to understand, but for you, if you are reading subsequently, you may tend to have a feeling that you have to do a fair value and replace the fair value as a deemed cost, which is incorrect, right? So now, commencement of owner occupation or development is a view to owner occupation for a transfer from investment property to owner occupied property. So it is a transfer out from investment property to Ind AS 16. So these are all situations where owner occupies or development for the purposes of owner occupation, or you have reclassified from for the future use from investment property to owner occupied property. All the three cases, it is a transfer out from Ind AS 40 to Ind AS 16. Development with a view to sale for a transfer from investment property to inventory. Again, it's a transfer out. You will apply Ind AS 40 to Ind AS 2. End of owner occupation for a transfer from owner occupied property to investment property, which we have seen, then it is a transfer in from Ind AS 16 to Ind AS 40. In all the cases, the carrying amount will be the deemed cost for the other category, provided if the fair value of the asset transferred or reclassified is lower than the uh, recoverable amount. To that extent, impairment should be adjusted. For recoverable amount, we normally consider the fair value or value in use. Okay, that is an additional principle which we have to have. When investment property should be derecognized, it is an asset. So when an asset will be derecognized, we have already seen enough number of time. When it is disposed or no future economics are going to come. So permanently withdrawn from its use and no economic benefits are going to come. So in that case, it is derecognized. Gain or loss on disposal should be treated in the P&L account. Nothing to do with OCI. Any compensation which has been received in case of investment property which is impaired, what will happen is the loss will be reduced to that extent, but the compensation will be recognized only if it is receivable. That means the loss might have been recognized in one accounting period, but when the recoverability of the compensation claim, for example, insurance claim, is receivable only, or it is known with certainty that it is recoverable only in the subsequent period, the related claim will be recognized as an income in the subsequent period. So we have to see the item as two different items. One is a loss, immediate accounting. Another is a claim as reimbursement. If it is receivable, recognized in the same period. If it is not receivable, or you are not able to have a reasonable certainty of recoverability, postpone it in the subsequent period where it is expected to meet the criteria. So we have seen classification or understanding what is investment property, what is owner occupied property, the other categories of property, and the related accounting standard which has to be selected. We have seen that. And we have also seen what is the initial recognition principles and what is the subsequent measurement principles. And we have also seen transfer in, transfer out, that is nothing but a reclassification from investment property or reclassification into investment property. What is the accounting treatment we have seen. And finally, what is the major disclosures which has to be given according to the standard. One, what is the accounting policy for measurement of investment property? It is always cost as per Ind AS 40. If it is IAS 40, you might have opted for fair value model. You can discuss about that. But Ind AS 40, only one measurement, which is nothing but the cost. Why you have considered that as an investment property? You have to explain that. What is the rental income from investment property should be shown separately. Direct operating cost relating to investment property is not your operating cost of the business. Accordingly, it should be shown separately. Whatever contractual obligation which you have, commitment, contingencies, and other things for purchase, construct, or for development of investment property, that should be disclosed as part of your commitment and contingencies in the notes and accounts. What is the depreciation method used in respect of the investment property? How you have determined the residual value, etc., is also comes into the discussion, including the useful life which you have determined. This is what I have said. Even though only cost model is permitted according to Ind AS 40, it also requires that you have to estimate what is the fair value of the investment property, or otherwise you are trying to tell them this property, if it is sold, because we are saying that it's for rental purposes as well as for capital appreciation. So intention may be for the purpose of disposal at a later point of time. So in that situation, what is the accumulated unrecognized profit? The user should understand what is the value of the property. That's the reason why it says also disclose the fair value of investment property. But strictly speaking, this is a hardship on the preparer of the financial statement. If the cost model I know pretty well, if I have to get the fair value, I have to go for valuation. When I'm going for a valuation, there is a cost involved. When I'm not at all allowed to use a fair value model, why should I go for a fair valuation disclosure? But unfortunately, that is not excluded when we have drafted Ind AS 40, and MCA has specifically asked that that should also be a disclosure. So to that extent, company has to spend something on arriving at the fair value and disclose that fair value as part of the notes and accounts. Again, wherever you have an asset, you should have a reconciliation of opening carrying amount to closing carrying amount. What is that? Opening cost plus transaction cost plus the additional cost of development or maybe additional purchases made during the period, less disposals, less accumulated depreciation, less accumulated impairment losses. All those things should be considered. Maybe transfers in and transfers out, all those things has to be given, and tally that number from the carrying amount as per last year financial statement to the carrying amount as per the current year financial statement. When you wanted to disclose the fair value of the investment property, but you cannot measure the fair value of the investment property reliably, then you have to disclose that fact that it's not practicable for measuring the fair value of the investment property. Having said that, it's very difficult to say that it's not possible to determine the fair value, because fair value measurement principles under Ind AS 13 say, Ind AS 113 says that you can measure the fair value of any asset. It's a rebuttable presumption, and accordingly it is very difficult to say that. And you should also, when you say that fair value cannot be disclosed, you have to say what is the description of the investment property, why fair value cannot be determined, and what is the range of estimate. So exact number I am not able to give, but if it is between this amount to that amount, if can I say that it's also possible to have a disclosure. That is another requirement of fair value disclosure. So having seen the entire standard in full, the last one which we have to see is what is the difference between Ind AS 40 and AS 13. AS 13 uses the word investments. Ind AS 40 uses the word Ind AS investment property. The reason is very simple. Under Ind AS, other than investment property, land, building, or both, goes into what we call it as a financial assets. Ind AS 109 comes in. All right. To that extent, the other investments are covered by a separate standard under Ind AS 40 as per Ind AS. The moment I say guidances are available for only a specific item of an investment, you will know clearly the guidances given in Ind AS 40 is much higher and extensive compared to AS 13, because AS 13 covers the entire investments. Okay, that is a major principle. So we will get into that. Very comprehensive, which deals only with investment property, land, building, or both. Other than that, Ind AS 40 is not covering. Whereas AS 13 talks about every type of investment. In fact, it makes a passing comment about the investment property. Okay, so that covers all the investments. Ind AS 40 tries to give a detailed guidance about what is investment property, what is owner occupied property. Whereas AS 13 generally defines about investment property. If at all you wanted to understand what is owner occupied property, you have to go to the respective standard. Maybe AS 10 will define what is the owner occupied property. It is not coming comprehensively under AS 13. Similarly, any property which I have taken as a lessee under an operating lease will go to Ind AS 116. That's the guidance which comes in. Suppose if it is under finance lease, Ind AS 40 covers that property. AS 13 is silent about it, but the accounting treatment is similar. For example, we try to show freehold land, leasehold land, both we are trying to show. So that is also covers. For example, if I am taking on a finance lease and giving it on rental to others, that will get covered under Ind AS 40. I'm taking a property on finance lease and using it for my business purposes, it goes to Ind AS 16. So very clear guidance which is available. But Ind AS AS 13 was silent about that. But the accounting treatment is similar, nothing to worry about it, because AS 10 will drive the accounting treatment. And AS 19 leases will drive the accounting treatment. So accordingly, the accounting treatment per se will not change, but only thing is here guidance is very extensive. Okay. With that, I think we are coming to the end of our discussion on investment property Ind AS 40. You can have some more doubts, some more questions, or you may seek little bit of clarification for certain other concepts. In those cases, my request is to post in our YouTube channel and I will answer there itself, so that the moment I upload my response to your questions, inputs, or comments, or further clarifications required, everyone in our channel will also get benefited immediately by means of getting the notification. If you are trying to send an independent message or mail to me, that will get only that will get you will only get the benefit and not the other subscribers. So we will look for a wider benefit rather than a short-term benefit only for the particular user. So please post your comments, questions, etc. in our YouTube channel. Let us take leave from this session and we'll meet with one more standard on Ind AS as part of our Ind AS knowledge series videos. Until then, stay home, uh, stay safe. Before I conclude, I have to answer one question which repeatedly comes in our channel, is that will you cover all the standards? That is my endeavor. And I have also seen that the exams have been postponed for the final students, uh, and you have sufficient time. Even if you are preparing for the current attempt, some people have asked me, sir, can you complete the entire standards before July 10? That is what somebody has given me as a timeline. But my personal timeline, which I have fixed for myself, is either end of this month or at the maximum by mid of June 2020. With that, I wanted to have all the standards have been covered as part of our Ind AS knowledge series videos. Hopefully, I am destined to do that with all your support, motivation, and a lot of encouragement which you are giving. Continue to support, continue to encourage, continue to motivate, continue to share your knowledges. And until then, I take leave. Goodbye.